Hey everybody, it's Omnidog here with a video on the 10 books I think DC needs to make into absolutes. And once they take my advice, where can they get those books? Where can you all get those books? That's right, organicpricebooks.com. Use my code Omnidog, $2 off. With code Omnidog, big savings here, 5% off, shipping 4 more books together with the code Omnidog. Sit, dude. Okay, the first book, this is an oldie, but a goodie. It may be off people's radar at this point, but it made an impact on me. This is Black Orchid with Neil Gaiman and gorgeous art by Dave McKean. And this would benefit, I'm trying to figure out, I feel like I got it in floppy form. This book came out in 2012, and yeah, this was late 80s, 88, 89, 91. I got it in floppy form originally, and this deluxe has been out for 12 years now. The story is great. Neil Gaiman takes Black Orchid, who is probably a forgotten C-list character at this point, and she becomes... I feel like this story's in continuity because it's got Constantine and Swamp Thing. Constantine, Swamp Thing, it's Black Orchid's origin and how she's created. So before I get into the story, let's take a look at the art. Because when you get an absolute, this is a book that's special. You want it for the art to be blown up and gorgeous and big. I'm kind of picky, and this is just me. I know there's plenty of you out there that like just the art blown up, but I like a good story too. There are plenty of books that I have not bought in absolute format because the story didn't knock me out. The art did, but the story didn't. But Black Orchid is one heck of a great book. Let's see if I can summarize it. In an anonymous corporate boardroom, superhero is shot through the head, her body is consumed by flames, and her killer walks free. Blah, 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 blah. Simultaneously, a deconstruction and a resurrection of an entire genre. This tale of the uncanny lives of Susan Linden embodies the new maturity in graphic storytelling, yada, yada, yada. Okay, this is the birth of Black Orchid. And the story is compelling and interesting. Gaiman writes a really knows what he's doing when he writes Constantine. And Dave McKean's art, this is just too small. This belongs, I fought it for a long time, but I think I'm going to have to get Arkham Asylum in absolute format because of the McKean art. But this is much different than Arkham Asylum. This is actually extremely understandable. It has, here we go. Oh, there's the bat. She's looking for Swamp Thing. And there's other guest characters in there. I feel like Black Orchid got worked in. Oh boy, look at this. I feel like Black Orchid got worked into continuity. Here she's working with Swamp Thing. Don't get hung up on continuity or anything. Just treat this as a one-off great story with beautiful art, and you'll be fine. So this is the first book I think should be made into an absolute by DC. Since it's got Swamp Thing and Constantine and Black Orchid, I think it's a Vertigo book. Yeah, it was a Vertigo book. It's got the supernatural element in it that I really dig, and just a great story and gorgeous art by Dave McKean. So first book, come on DC, Black Orchid. The next book is even older than that. This is early 80s. Camelot 3000, Mike Barr and Brian Boland. This is the story of around the year 3000, aliens invade Earth, and Earth doesn't have the technology to fight back against the aliens. It turns out only King Arthur and Camelot and his Knights of the Round Table do. So they find King Arthur and his Round Table and Merlin and everybody else. And this is early Brian Boland, early-ish, but you can see just how great it already is. And he got progressively better and better, like all artists do. But this is still just gorgeous. An early work by Brian Boland. This needs to be blown up into absolute size. I love the story by Mike Barr. It's really fun to have, well, so you got Morgan Le Fay brought into it. Sir Lancelot, Galahad, they're brought in different ways, different manner. It's not like you'll find out who this person is. Who is this person? Is that a Knight of the Round Table? Well, when you read it in absolute form, you'll find out, because this has got gorgeous art, great story, and needs to be in absolute size. Any Brian Boland book needs to be in absolute size, and this is one of them. Camelot 3000. This is, well, at this point, it's a golden oldie. It's 40 years old. But let's go, DC. We need this in absolute format. Camelot 3000. The next book, it boggles my mind why the Last God, it's been renamed into Felspire Chronicles by Philip Kennedy Johnson. Riccardo Federici, whose art is amazing. This is a Black Label book. This is standard size. This should have never been released in anything other than gigantic Black Label magazine size, or at least a deluxe. What Philip Kennedy Johnson does in this book is nothing short of remarkable. I will put in here, in the description, my review of it, because I loved this book. It may have been, if it wasn't my book of the year, it was in my top 2 when it came out. Excuse me, it dates back to kind of medieval times, and Philip Kennedy Johnson, he wrote all these amazing, you have to read all this stuff in there because it helps flesh out the story. But let me see if I can find, I know I'm talking about the story when I should be just talking about the art, but he even wrote the music for it and then transposed it into what it would have been back in kind of medieval times. And the book is full of this. So the world building in this book is remarkable, but Riccardo Federici's art is astonishingly gorgeous. I'm not sure why it was not released in at least a deluxe format. I understand why, you don't do something immediately in absolute size, but boy, would this book benefit from it. Let me just keep showing you. And this art is just astonishing. And it's about a group that goes on quests to use magic, and it's not necessarily a dungeon crawl, but they encounter plenty of dungeons, plenty of elves and magical fairies and all manner of creatures. And Riccardo Federici does an amazing job on drawing this. And I want to take a look at who the colorist is, because the colors sparkle. It does have a dark palette because of what they're going through on their quest, but then they're shimmers of the light in the darkness. Let's see, who is the colorist? And the letters are pretty boss too. Colorists. Oh, there's several. Sonny Go, and Alan Pastelacqua, Arif Prianta with Mathis Lopes and Dean White. Colorist Dave Stewart. Okay, so there's a few colorists. We all know Dave Stewart. Illustrators, Last God Tale. Yeah, so this is an exciting, fun, grim, scary, amazing book with consequences. Nobody's safe, and there are plenty of living creatures that defy the imagination, and this backstory that's so important to it. Look at this. This needs to be absolute size. I'll put, I will definitely put in my description my video that at least contains my review of this. And I also will put in there a link to The Brave and the Boys, because Jake is the one that gave me this idea. He has a lot of great ideas, and he's generous enough to share them with me, because I feel like I've run out of ideas, but not Jake. He's pumping ideas right into me, which is great. So, The Last God. Oh yeah, that's right. Two fellowships of heroes struggle with the same threat. 30 years apart. One group will doom their world. The other must try to save it. And it's the same group. Oh, whoops. Spoiler alert. Okay, Last God. Definitely, DC, you need to give it the absolute treatment. This is something I've read more recently. These next few books are things that I've read more recently. Human Target by Tom King. You're welcome for whatever deluxe comes out, because I bought the standard hardcovers because I couldn't wait for it to come out in deluxe. The Human Target, look at this art by Greg Smallwood. The Human Target is a character that assumes the identity of some type of business leader, political leader that is going to try to be assassinated. He takes their identity and saves them and finds who the killer is. Only in this book, the Human Target accidentally, and they tell you this in the back, so I'm not spoiling it, the Human Target is the one who's been poisoned, and he has not much time to try and find out who poisoned him and why, who was after the person he was protecting and why. And it's very interesting because Tom King, along with Tom Taylor and some other writers, are really good at writing C-list characters. I know Guy Gardner's not a C-list character, but Ice, his former girlfriend, is. And here's Booster Gold. Ice features prominently in this book. And I just love this Greg Smallwood art. It is gorgeous. And it is ready for an absolute. This is book 1, Human Target, Ice. Human Target, Martian Manhunter. There's all kinds of interesting characters in this. And then this is book 2. This would be a great absolute with this art. And I think did Greg Smallwood do his own colors? Let's see. Yeah, Greg Smallwood did his own colors. Clayton Cowles did the nice lettering. So yeah, Human Target, really look at how nicely laid out this is, how imaginative this is. Yeah, Greg Smallwood knows what he's doing, and I love the story. Tom King just writes Chance, that's his name, the Human Target's name, just writes him just amazing. And to bring in Ice and make her super interesting is really remarkable. But this art needs an absolute. DC, let's go. The next book, Batman, Superman, World's Finest. Mark Waid, of course, one of my favorite writers. these, there's 3 of them right now that I've read. And the art is by Dan Mora with colors by Tamara Bonvillain. First of all, the story I'm nuts about. It's great. And Dan Mora's art, I don't know how he does it, but not only is he a great artist, as he showed in Once and Future, but not only is he a great artist, but he is working on like a couple, 2 or 3 titles at a time and getting them all in on time. And this artwork, I don't know. I don't know I haven't heard from anybody that doesn't like Dan Mora art. Go ahead and don't like it, but I think you're in the minority. I think everybody loves Dan Mora art. And here comes in the Doom Patrol, which was a great touch for Mark Waid to bring in. And this art is just spectacular. There's 3 books of it so far that I have read that have Dan Mora art. I have not read the 4th standard hardcover yet. I think they are, at this point, have moved on to a different book. I think Dan Mora has anyway. But it's so cool to see Doom Patrol, Supergirl, Batman, Superman, Robin. And the story is just A+. So that's what I really love. Great art with an A+ story. This is what you're getting. And you could put the whole series into an absolute and people would love it because everybody loves Dan Mora. I don't want to hear from you if you don't. That's crazy town. Crazy town talk. Well, I see, here's another Tom King book. This is my book of the year when it came out, Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow. Tom King writes a fantastic Supergirl. Bilquis Evely's art is beautiful, and this deserves an absolute. The quick synopsis is that Supergirl is in a sulky mood, and she's kind of tired of being in her cousin's more famous footsteps. She wants to go to a red sun planet to get drunk and just wallow in her sorrows. Some people have said, well, that's not Kara if she's getting drunk. And I say, this is what happens when she's, you know, a person and she has inferior feelings. She's going through a little bit of a crisis right now, a crisis of confidence. And she just wants to go get blasted and forget about it. Well, she gets taken into, she gets not roped in, but she decides to help a young woman on her quest. Crypto is with her when they go to the planet with the red sun, Supergirl and Crypto. And Supergirl ends up not only getting drunk, but going on a major league quest with this girl to help her get revenge. What a great story this is. This has to get a deluxe. Bilquis Evely's art is just too good. This deserves, because not only does it have great writing, but it's got freaking great art. Just love it. This is one of my favorite books. My top 10 turned into like a top 17, and now I think it's a top 20, and this book's in it all time. This art deserves an absolute DC. Look at that. Bilquis Evely, amazing talent. While we're on Supergirl, here's a book that took a lot of people by surprise, I think. Supergirl Being Super. Mariko Tamaki writes a young Kara. I think this is out of continuity, but don't worry about continuity. Doesn't matter. This is her as a teenager discovering herself and being coming to terms with the discovery of her powers and what's happening to her body as she's changing, hitting puberty, becoming a teenager. Pay attention to this zit right there on her, because that plays a major role later on. I don't want to show it. And it's all about her discovery of herself and where she came from and how she might be related to Superman. And this book has consequences. I think it's interesting. This is not necessarily a happy ending type of book. Joelle Jones' art is just absolutely gorgeous. And Joelle Jones, I think everybody, well, I won't say everybody loves her. I'm just going to say I love her. I certainly love her art, and I want to skip this part because this is a major spoiler. Okay, she runs track, and she's trying to be a normal person, you know, to try to fit in. Don't forget that Zet. It's an amazing sequence. But Joelle Jones' art, combined with the great writing of Marika Tamaki, deserves an absolute. And it's Kara's journey of self-discovery. I don't want to show too much more if you haven't read it, but it's gorgeous. Joelle Jones, her art deserves an absolute. Next, I don't know when I'm ever going to see this book in any kind of cohesive format. This is Batman Tales of the Demon. This book's fairly old, and it's a cohesive story because it starts out with like a solid run, a straight through run, and not just Neil Adams and Dick Giordano's art. It's all written by Denny O'Neil, and this was, let's see, 1987. I feel like I got this book back in the 80s, maybe the 90s. Sam Hamm, 1990. So maybe I got it back in 1990-ish, 91. Okay. But this was published right at the beginning of the Bronze Age. This and Green Lantern, Green Arrow, 76, I think, marked the beginning of the Bronze Age for DC. And because, here we go with the Neil Adams artwork and original coloring. And I don't know when this is all I have for the original art and original coloring, instead of what happened with the Batman by Neil Adams omnibus. And the important point is, not only are we introduced to Ra's al Ghul, who has a respect for Bruce Wayne and Batman, he calls him the detective. Talia, Ra's daughter, has a major league crush on Batman. And this, Denny O'Neil helps take Batman back into the darkness and becomes a precursor to the Dark Knight. And it's important. The reason why I've always said this is important is because this has taken superheroes away from the sort of Batman 66 campy stuff with the Grasshopper Gang and a goofy Riddler and goofy Joker. And these have serious consequences to all these things. There's Batman being surprised. Now, if you only have the Neil Adams drawn stories, you're going to miss kind of the through line of Ra's al Ghul's stories because, see, this is by Herb Novick and Dick Giordano. Still, nothing wrong with this art. This art is fine. But this is the way the book should be enjoyed, as a continuous story and not just the Neil Adams drawn issues. Let's see if I can find some more Neil Adams. I believe this is Neil Adams. Looks like it to me. Yeah, it is. Neil Adams and Dick Giordano. What a great pair they were. Pencils and inks. And this deserves an absolute. We need to get Ra's al Ghul's storyline with covers blown up into an absolute size format. And I would argue that it needs to be the entire run, so it reads as a complete Ra's al Ghul story. So how many, let's see how many Neil Adams ones there are. There's one Neil Adams, two Neil Adams, three Neil Adams. Okay, just three Neil Adams ones. But the rest of the artists are good too, and the stories are written by Dennis O'Neil. Tales of the Demon, let's go, DC. Absolute format. This one is my comedy pick. Superbad's pal Jimmy Olsen. Who Killed Jimmy Olsen? This is one of the best things Matt Fraction's ever written. I love this book. It's funny. It's you don't need to know. I mean, I know about all of the weirdness that Jimmy Olsen went through back in the 60s when he was Turtle Man and Werewolf Man and Goofball Man, whatever. But and he had so many weird identities and turned into Elastalad and turned into things. But Matt Fraction does a great job with the humor on this. It's funny and it's exciting. And Steve Lieber's art, Superman's pal Lex Luthor, Steve Lieber's art needs to be blown up into an absolute. This is one of the funniest books I've read, and Matt Fraction really shines here with his writing. And Steve Lieber, I love his art. The book is just got a dry sense of humor all the way through, and I really dig it, and I think you will too. And this needs, there's Elastic Lad, okay. So this book definitely needs an absolute. Great art, great story. Come on, DC. Absolute me on this. And the last book is a big book already. Whoop, almost lost my pile of books. Harleen. This book stands out as one of the best Harley Quinn stories that's ever been written and illustrated by Stepan Šejic. And not only is the art stunning and astonishing and amazing, but the story is just incredible. And it tells, through Stepan Šejic's storytelling, the story of Harleen, how she meets Joker, falls in love with him. And you've heard the story, but this fleshes it out a lot more, gives it a lot more interesting details. And Stepan Šejic's art is just remarkable. And this, while this is already a big book, it needs to be bigger. It needs to be the size of my room. So this book definitely needs an absolute. When it came out, pretty sure this was one of my books of the year too. When it came out. So there's a lot of my books of the year here. They have one thing in common. Great art, great stories. DC, Harleen needs to be in absolute format. Let's go. Come on now. Look at how beautiful this is. Wouldn't you love to see this in an absolute size? I say yes. So there we go. 10 books that I think DC needs to make into an absolute. There's 10 ideas. You're welcome, DC. I just came up with 10 publishing ideas for you. Just send the reader copies to me. Thank you very much. Peace and love. Peace and love. Feel free to leave your own comments on books you want to be blown up into absolute size. Hit subscribe, hit the notification bell, and subscribe, hit the notification bell. Oh, and give us a like. Give me a like. Thank you. Thank you for watching. Peace and love. Peace and love. Be good to each other out there. Just try to be kind to each other. Thank you all for watching so much. Peace and love.